Shirley and Swanson. I guess we're going to have to start over.
No, just keep going. I'll just edit it.
All right, Meinhardt. September 1st, 1936, Mitchell, South Dakota. It was Methodist Hospital. Shirley Ann Meinhardt. My parents had 4 boys when I was born, and 3 of them were, the youngest of the older 3 were 10 years older, was 10 years older than me, and then 12 years older and 13 years older. Then my younger brother was 19 months older than me. And my family was very happy to finally get a girl, and they could hardly wait to tell everybody they finally had a girl. The boys were all pleased, and Shirley Temple was the big star of the time, and so they wanted to name me Shirley Ann, so that's how I got the name Shirley Ann. I'm sure my 19-month-old brother wasn't so happy to see me because he had been getting all the attention, and now everybody was focused on me, so of course things were quite a bit different than they are now. It's hard to say what the world was like then. The Depression was letting up, and that's why my parents decided to have more children. And my dad finally had a steady job, so that's why Ralph and I were born. So it was pretty much over. But then when the war came along, World War II, we had food stamps and a lot of things that were, I suppose, not really similar to a depression, but in a lot of ways, a lot of things were restricted. We could only get a certain amount of sugar, and we had to get stamps to get certain items. We were only allowed so many stamps because everything was being saved for the war effort. That was in 1941, but that's a little bit ahead of myself, I guess. First of all, we lived in a little house on East 9th in Mitchell. Since I was the 5th child, and Mom had 2 little ones and 3 older boys, the girl next door helped my mom when she first had me anyway. We only lived there about a year. When I was 2, we moved to a house on 7th Street in Mitchell, and it was a bigger house, and it had bedrooms upstairs, much more roomy. The bedrooms upstairs, seems like we had a playroom, but I have pictures, and I don't know if it was a playroom or if it was just our bedroom or what. I doubt there was a playroom in addition. But my brother Bob, he had problems sleepwalking, and it had a porch off the 2nd floor. Oh, and one night he walked off the porch in his sleep and fell to the ground, but he didn't get hurt. That's when my fear of dogs started. There was the neighbor next door had a dog who had just had puppies, and there was a little path that ran alongside theirs, but I think they had a fence, but I don't remember how, but the dog bit me around my chest.
Oh my God.
And so I was afraid of dogs for years and years after that. In fact, I used to go out of my way to go to school sometimes because some neighbors had a dog, and if it was out, I went the other direction. Oh. We moved to a house on West 11th Street, which was a half a block from my grandma Meinhardt, but I just don't remember us ever having anything to do with it or all, so I really don't know much about it. It was kind of obvious that she and my mom didn't get along real well, so. She had just the 2 boys, and of course Mom came from a family of 9, which meant they were from 2 different worlds.
Yeah.
And my mom had lived on a farm, and my father had lived in town, so he met her when she was at the nursing school at the Methodist Hospital in Mitchell. We played with the kids in our neighborhood. Ralph was just so laid back that, if somebody would take his wagon away from him or something, and he just let it go, and I wouldn't. I'd go here I am a year and a half younger than him, and I would go and get his wagon back for him. Mom was very careful about us getting our vitamins and everything else, and we had to take cod liver oil every day, and it was absolutely horrible. That was going to be for our well-being, so that was not good. when it started, the rumors of war and everything, then my brothers were getting older, and my oldest brother was like probably 17, and I think it was 1941, I'm not sure, and unfortunately I had the opportunity to get the discharge papers from where she was at the mental institution, and Cheryl, it turned out my dad had given all that stuff to Johnny, and then Cheryl didn't find it until after her mom died. So she asked me if I wanted it, and I said no, and I should have taken it just so I would have known exactly the date. It would have been 1941, but that's later in 41, and I think it was earlier in the year, so I was probably still 3. And she attempted suicide, tied a sheet around her neck and around the banister and threw herself over the banister. But
wait, who did that?
Fortunately, the sheet came untied.
Who did that?
My mother. Anyway, evidently, I was sitting at the bottom of the stairs when this happened. It blanked out for me. I have no recall of it whatsoever. And one of my older brothers said he was also there at the time, but he doesn't recall anything at all about it. It's like we just blanked it all out of our mind. I think I must have asked my dad over and over, "Where's Mom? Where's Mom?" And they wouldn't tell me anything. She was very upset about the possibility of her sons going off to war. I think there were a lot of things, family things, that were involved, but we'll never know what they were. But anyway, she went to they called it an insane asylum at that time. She had electroshock therapy. And then she came home, and then she was okay for years after that. So, but I guess, she learned to do things to keep her mind off of everything. Then we moved again. And that house was a really nice house. It had 4 bedrooms upstairs. And then we moved to this other house on 10th Street, and it really was only a 2-bedroom house, basically a 2-bedroom house. But it had an upstairs, which was an attic. My brothers all slept up there. Well, Ralph and I slept in my bedroom together until he got older. And when my brothers all went off to war, then he moved upstairs. But that will have to be his story, but it was not pleasant. It was freezing cold in the winter and boiling hot in the summer in the upstairs area, and he had to sleep out on the front porch, which was screened-in porch. When I think back to his life, I think how horrible his life was compared to mine. When Pearl Harbor came, the U.S. did declare war and joined the war against Germany. Well, my oldest brother had gone off to Seattle to work in the shipbuilding industry before the war. And of course that bothered Mom to have her son so far away from her. And then Don followed him to Seattle when the war was declared. Johnny signed up first, and he got into the Air Force. Johnny was a pilot in Burma, and Don was assigned to Guam, I believe. Of course, my mom was worried constantly because Johnny was flying these dangerous missions in Burma, and my brother Don was flying these missions. But your mom has the book that Don wrote, so if you want more on that, you can get that there.
How do you think that impacted your childhood with your parents, like being worried about your brothers?
Well, I told Mom, don't worry. That sounds like me, don't worry. Yeah. It'll all be okay. Anyway, it turned out it was all okay. She was very nervous about that, but I don't know. I think, when she attempted suicide and that was all hushed up and pushed aside, I think that kind of killed a lot of feeling in me. I'm not sure, but that's kind of the way I feel. I just feel like, well, things happen,
Yeah.
And I just didn't pay much attention to it. I think it had more of an impact on me than I ever realized. We made it through the war years. During the war years, of course, the kids were all collecting scrap metal and taking it to school, and everything else that they wanted collected, we were collecting it and taking it to the schools to get shipped off for the war effort. And shoes, they were making their shoes so cheaply then, and the leather wasn't much. And I, according to my mom, hardly ever stood still. So anyway, I was running out of shoes, and she'd have to use the shoe coupons for Ralph for me because he didn't wear his out. He wasn't running all over the town and everything. Well, not that I was running all over town, but I was doing a lot more. I was more of an active child than he was. He liked reading and studying and stuff like that. So he was a quiet child, and I was the
Rambunctious.
noisy one, I guess. Well, I had two friends that were really good friends. I had other friends, but two friends that were like my best friends. They were sisters, and they lived a block away from me. I played with the younger one. One was a year older than me, but she was in my class because she had failed a grade. And then one was a year younger than me. I liked the younger one, and I got along a lot. Well, we both got along, but we had more things in common and enjoyed playing with each other more. We did lots of things, but whenever there was anything like ice skating, I'd need new skates or whatever. And we had the park that had the pool, the deepest pool, which was only 3 feet at its deepest point. Oh. But anyway, the park with the deepest pool was just 4 blocks from me. The ice skating rink was 4 blocks from me. And we were always doing things like that. Skating came into fashion. Then there was a roller rink, and it was just not very far from me either, and so we would go roller skating. But we had the roller skates that you turned a key and clicked them on over your shoes, and we did that before we ever even started roller skating at the roller rink. Nancy and I packed a lunch, which I can't imagine anybody letting their kids do now, but we packed a lunch and we went off to Firesteel Creek, which is a creek probably about a mile away from our house. And we climbed the hills and had our lunch and came back home. But we had a fun time. Sometimes for fun, we'd get a quarter and ride the bus all day. Not all day, but from one end to the other and back again. And of course, the bus driver knew what we were doing, that we were just going for a ride.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to get off at the other end or somewhere in between. But anyway, well, things were much more lax then, because when I was about 6 or 7 years old, we'd all gone down to my grandma's at Gayville on the farm, and then Mom and Ralph came back, and I wanted to stay, so I stayed. And then I came back on the train alone.
When you were 6 or 7?
What?
When you were 6 or 7?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But then the conductors, when they saw there was a child alone, they'd say, "Where are you going?" And the people who were dropping me off would say, "She's going to Mitchell, so make sure she gets off at Mitchell." So anyway, and he watched out for me while I was on the train. And then I got home, and but that's something you would never think of nowadays. So,
no.
And we had gravel streets, and so it was always very dusty. And Nancy's father had horses. He pulled a water wagon around town, sprayed water on the gravel streets. And then my parents read, because he was a city worker, he got $10 a month. So,
was that a lot or a little?
No, it wasn't a lot even then. And they didn't know how they lived on that. They had 10 kids.
Oh my God.
The mother got cancer of the stomach, and then she died when I was in about the 7th grade, I think. The older sisters kind of had to take over. I don't know exactly what happened, because about that time I went to junior high, and when I went to junior high, I made all new friendships. Nancy wasn't in my grade anymore, and Shirley was in a different set because I was in the smart group, or whatever you want to call it, and I was put in the Latin class, and then we had home rooms according to what classes we were in. And that's when I met Kay, who was my best friend still is one of my best friends. Well, she's still alive. She had atrial fibrillation for many years, which she's got it pretty much taken care of now, but we were always thinking, she said, oh, well, you'll live longer than me. I said, I don't know that. So anyway, the last time I talked to her, I said, I'm going to die before you, Kate. She says, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. And I told her why. And she said, oh, she's sorry to hear that. Yeah, we still talk to each other. And it's funny during our lives occasionally because, you know, I moved on and she moved one way and another, but every so often our paths would cross and we'd be very near each other. So
where does she live now?
She lives in Northern California now.
Okay.
And I've gone to visit her there once, and she's come to visit me here. We went up to Door County. So junior high, I was in Latin class, and of course that was the years when girls and boys started to take more notice of each other. But there wasn't any particular guy that I really liked. There was one guy who liked me, but I didn't particularly like him. And then when it came time for we didn't have a prom. I can't remember what we had. The boy that was sitting behind me in homeroom, he invited me. And so I said yes, because I kind of liked him. He heard through the grapevine that I had told another boy yes, which I hadn't. And so anyway, it just kind of got all confused, and then neither one of them were going to take me. And so then another kid that I didn't really particularly care for at all asked me, and I decided, and I said yes, just to go to it, but it wasn't a very promising evening.
No.
We had a toga party when I was in the 9th grade because the Latin class did. And that was fun. After we had our toga party, they all wanted to go to somebody's house. And so they said, call your mom and dad and ask if you can go. I said, oh, I don't think they'll let me go. Call them and ask them. So I called them and asked them. My mom said I could go, and I didn't want to go. I don't know why I didn't want to go. So I said, no. She says, no, I can't go. I don't know why I didn't want to go, but anyway. Sometimes I just get tired of stuff.
Yeah, I can feel that.
And I figured I'd had enough for the night. And I was in the music stuff, and so we put on an operetta. It was a song of Hiawatha. It was a long thing. And so that day of it, when I went home for lunch, Mom had rice for lunch. I hated rice. And I said, I'm not eating it. And so I didn't eat it. So I didn't have any food since breakfast in me. And so I'm up there on the stage. It's like they had it at around 3 o'clock so the parents could come. We're standing there, and I was an alto and Kay was a soprano, and we were standing there looking at each other. And all of a sudden I just felt everything was kind of going blank and dizzy or whatever. And I crumpled to the ground.
Oh my goodness.
I fainted. And of course, Mom was up there in a second. And they took me back, and the back part, and I don't know, I came to. Anyway, it was because I know it was because I didn't have anything for lunch. I should have eaten. She should have given me some bread. She shouldn't have sent me when she knew I was going to be in a. That's what I think.
Yeah.
She should have had known enough to know that if I was going to be seen I needed more than something for breakfast. So, at any rate, that was kind of funny. Oh, what was funny? There was a show at that time that everybody listened to on radio. It was called Stop the Music. So when somebody recognized the tune, they would shout, "Stop the music!" And then they would name what the tune was. And so, anyway, when I fell on the floor, the teacher said, "Stop the music."
That's funny.
It was so funny. We played softball and all that kind of stuff. Played a lot of ball when we lived in the neighborhood, and Ralph and I and the kids across the alley from us, and Nancy and Shirley and whoever there was around, we would play ball. Somebody knocked a ball through the window. I don't know if it was me or Ralph. I can't remember who, but anyway, so my dad had to pay for it, but I think that's enough of junior high. Can't think of anything more exciting about it.
Did you enjoy junior high?
Oh yeah, because I was with a group that were all, and a lot of them were, they went to the Methodist church like I did. We had a Methodist youth group. It was very popular. Kids from other faiths came to our youth group because there were so many. We'd play spin the bottle and a musical chair, and we played that, and that was always fun. Somebody'd end up on somebody's lap. Yeah, we played a lot of silly games like that. But.
Did you kiss and spin the bottle?
What?
Did you kiss each other with spin the bottle?
I can't even remember that part of it. I guess it wasn't that interesting to me. It was exciting for us to go to now be at senior high instead of in the middle school any longer. I was in the band.
What did you play?
I played trombone. I was in a lot of things. I have a yearbook. You can look and see what I was in high school. Part of the Job's Daughters, and of course my dad wasn't a Mason, nor was my mother, but we had a half cousin of Mom's who was an Eastern Star, so I was able to get into the Job's Daughters that way. And of course the Job's Daughters always had nice dances and everything, so it was a very, very interesting part of my life. Job's Daughters, well, that's part of the Masonic temple stuff. There's the Masonic Masons, and then the Eastern Stars, and then the Job Daughter and the D. Malays. So anyway, and that was more of the, I suppose, upper crust people. I don't want to call them upper crust because nobody at Mitchell was upper crust. Anyway, they were the more higher stationed or something, whatever you would say. We would have meetings. I can't remember how often they were, if they were once a month or what, but then, of course, the big thing would be when we had a dance, and so we could pick somebody to come to the dance with us. In the band, we had a marching band, so for homecoming, we always were marching down the street for homecoming. And for years, whenever I'd see a band marching, it'd bring tears to my eyes, I guess, remembrance of it. Well, I was involved in different clubs, probably the Home Ec Club. I can't even remember what clubs I was involved with, but I guess the main things with me were being in the band. And also then when you got to senior high, you could try out to be an usher. The big festival that they had, and they would have some well-known, it was Horace Height, the amateur group. And so he had all these amateurs that had been on his program. There were kids that were our age too there. I went in and interviewed, and I got chosen to be one of the ushers, which was a thrill for me. So we were there for the whole show every night that week. Afterwards, sometimes when we'd talk to the people that were on the show, I can't remember if it was that year, but one year Betty Grable was there, and I don't know why she would have been in that one, so it must have been some other time when somebody else was there. Maybe her husband, Harry James, was there. But anyway, we saw her on the street. Mom and I saw her on the street. And she said, "Oh, get her autograph." Well, I didn't even have a pencil or anything. So anyway, but I did finally get her autograph, and I've thrown it away since then. Who cares? So we would go to the show then with these kids, and I can't remember if we went in the afternoon before the show or if we went after the show. It would have been pretty late, I think, after the show, so it must have been in the afternoon. This one boy really seemed to like me. And so anyway, and he was always talking to me, and we went to the show together and everything. And then when Christmas came, he sent me a present. And to thank me for being so nice to him when they were away and on the road. A rhinestone necklace. And when he sent it, Mom was not too happy because she said, well, they shouldn't be sending gifts. You shouldn't be getting gifts from boys at this age that are that expensive, because she had a rhinestone necklace, and this one was obviously worth a lot more money than hers was. But I don't know, I didn't continue corresponding with him. I looked him up later. Can I insert this now?
Yeah.
I looked him up on Facebook a few years ago, and I was able to find him. But you can't talk to him. He's personal. But anyway, he lives in Brandon, Missouri. But he had moved from where he lived. He lived in Irvine, I think so, Irvine, California, someplace there in the Los Angeles area. And he had moved up to the San Jose area. And then he was now in Brandon. So anyway, it was kind of interesting. I told Nancy this story too, but anyway.
Would you have messaged him if you could have?
I might have just asked if he remembered me.
Yeah.
Tell him thank you again for the rhinestone necklace.
That'd be. Are you sure you can't message him? Let's look after this and see if you can message him.
What?
So let's take a look after this and see if you can message him.
Well, he may not even be alive anymore. That was like 4 years ago.
Oh.
I met your grandpa when I was a sophomore. My girlfriend Patsy was going with him. She was kind of iffy about who she. Then there's Sadie Hawkins dance. There was always a Sadie Hawkins dance every year, and the girl got to ask a boy. Mm-hmm. So I told her I was going to ask Don. She said, I don't care. So I did.
That's pretty brazen. She was dating him, and you said you were going to ask him?
Well, she had been going out with him. I don't know that she was actually, it was more of loose friendships then.
Yeah.
And so anyway, well, I asked her if she was going to invite him, and she said no. And I think I asked her if she was going to invite him, and she said no. And I said, well, then I'm going to. And she said, it's fine with me. So.
Had you talked to him much before that?
No, I don't know that I'd talked to him much at all, if at all. I mean, I don't know. I just knew him from being around and from going out with Patsy a couple of times. But no, I didn't really know him.
He said yes when you asked him to the dance?
So he said yes, so we went to the Sadie Hawkins dance, and that was kind of it.
How much older was he than you?
Well, he was 2 grades ahead of me because he was a senior and I was a sophomore.
You're pretty brave.
But he was 3 years older than me.
That's pretty brave, asking a senior when you're a sophomore.
Yeah, he was going out with sophomores anyway, so.
Yeah.
No. There's so much difference in boys and girls at that age that most boys are too immature. Girls don't really even like the ones that are their age, so.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's the way it was. Yeah, we started dating after that. And the rest is a closed chapter on that.
You got pregnant, you had Dick, and you finished out high school, right?
Yeah.
And then...
I took a correspondence course, maybe 2, I don't remember, but I had enough credits already from the classes that I had taken that I didn't need but 1 or 2 more, so I took that. And then I was there for the last half of my senior year. After I graduated, Don went into the Army. I was supposed to go to college, but that was during the Korean War, and he was down there at basic training for the first 8 weeks, and then he decided that he was going to get shipped overseas, and so he wanted me to come down there. My parents didn't want me to come down there. I didn't want to go down there, but he wanted me down there. So that's where I went and lived in this little trailer house in the woods in the Ozarks. And
were you married at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we got married before I did. Yeah, I was lucky that I went to a school where they allowed married kids to go to school. A lot of them wouldn't let them, and there are a lot of schools that would not allow married teenagers to go to school, which is so stupid.
That's
but
so
anyway.
weird.
It was just a trailer with a sink with running water, so about all you can say. It didn't have hot and cold water. And there was no bathroom, and the stove was a small stove range. I think they were 24-inch ranges then, and it didn't have a thermostat on it or anything like that. It was just, you turned it on and you could either put something in there to tell what the temperature was, but I don't know. I made it through it. It was only 8 weeks, but
8 weeks with, how old was Dick?
Dick was a year old. I don't really want to talk about the next 17 years.
We can skip it then.
Which were when I was married to Don.
So let's skip
and
it.
As far as I was concerned, I am concerned, it was like 17 years of hell, living in hell. But I finally got out of it.
I'm very happy for you that you were able to get out of it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when we got divorced, it was finally final on January 1971, and then I met Rich I met him on May 21st, 1971. It's funny, people would tell me later when they knew both, then they had known, that I had been married to Don, and then I was married to Rich, and they said, it's like you went from one extreme to the other. But the funny thing was that the caring came from Rich and not Don.
Yeah.
The caring and compassion came from Rich, and the other was, and I would just look at them and I think, if you only knew. I was, 1971, I guess I would have been 35.
How did you guys meet?
Well, I was going around to different things, trying to meet people. They had Parents Without Partners groups, and they had singles groups and different things. So, and I had gone out with the girlfriend that I have from when I was working in personnel. She and I still talk to each other too. That was before I went to the emergency department, so that would have been between 1971 and, I think she left in 73 or 4 or something. Her sister was single too, and so sometimes we'd go out to some of these bars that had dances and stuff. But I never really met anybody there. One guy really liked me, wanted my number. He's 10 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
I said no thanks.
Guess you were a looker.
So I went to a Parents Without Partners in Arlington Heights. I guess Don had called me and wanted to know what I was going to do, and I said, and I generally didn't tell him much of any, but I said, I'm going to Parents Without Partners tonight or something. Well, wouldn't you know, he showed up there too. Here he has Georgie. He's living with Georgie. And he shows up at that Parents Without Partners. Did I tell you this before?
No.
So anyway, he's at the Parents Without Partners. Then I met Rich, and
that same time?
On that night,
oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so I was talking to Rich a lot, and I guess he was keeping an eye on me. I wasn't watching him at all. I knew he was there, but that was it. And Rich wasn't drinking that night because he had some kind of a thing where he was taking a penicillin of some type, and so he couldn't drink. So then he asked me if I wanted to go out and get something to eat. And I said, oh, sure. So then he said, oh my gosh, I just forgot. I don't have a car. I came with a friend. And I said, well, I have a car. Well, it was a good thing it worked out that way, because we went out to get in my car, and I tried starting up the car, and it wouldn't start. So he said, let me try it. He tried it, it wouldn't start. He said, no, there's something. He said, he opened up the trunk, and I didn't have a flashlight in the car, but he had a match, and so he looked, and Don had pulled the, what's that one plug that goes to the other plug that makes it start? Spark plugs, it goes to the spark plugs. Anyway, he had pulled that off. And so he said, oh, this is unplugged. And I said, oh, really? And I knew who had done it. So anyway, he put it back on and off we went. And then we went to this Italian place in Des Plaines, and it was really nice. And we had a good talk, and he was just so easy to talk to, and he was listening. And, it wasn't like some men who were always, trying to butt in and say everything and tell all about themselves or whatever. He was listening to me, and I was listening to him, but it was just a good conversation. And so then, that was on a Friday night, and then on Monday morning, when I got up to go to work, my car wouldn't start. And it was the same thing like it had been before. So I opened up the hood, and I looked in. Not only was it pulled off of that one socket or plug-in, whatever you call it, it was gone completely. It wasn't there. And I thought, well, he's obviously taken it off again. So I thought, what could he have done with it? Would he have taken it off and taken it home with him, or what? So I looked in the garbage can, and there it was. So I put it back on, and off I went.
Oh my goodness.
I thought, oh, such babishness, but anyway. So it just, one thing evolved into another, and I can't think of anything else right now.
How long did you and Grandpa Rich date before you got married?
Before we got married? 17 years.
You dated for 17 years before you got married?
Yeah, and then we were only married for a couple of years.
I want to hear.
And then we got divorced again.
Yeah, but kinda. You got divorced, but you still.
What?
So you were still like partners up until he
Yeah,
died. Yeah,
we were still partners. He said, well, part of the reason is that we were supposed to be buying a house together, but he kept dragging his feet all the time, and he wouldn't go look at houses. We'd go look at houses, So anyway, then finally I said, well, it doesn't look like you want to live with me, or buy a new house, so I don't think that we should even pursue this. So anyway, then he said, oh no, I don't want to get divorced. Well, you're not going to look for a house for us together, and I don't want to live in your house. You can't live in my house because of the stairs. And he wanted to go to Jekyll Island. And I said, well, I'm not going anywhere with you until this divorce is final. So he got the divorce, and that was it. But
was he living 2 houses down at that point already?
Yeah. We'd been living 2 houses down that, well, he bought the house, his house, probably about maybe 5 or 6 years, I don't know exactly when, after we met. And then, so we lived 2 doors apart for, well, we were together 45 years, so probably we lived 2 doors apart, probably around 37, 38, somewhere in there.
Oh, wow.
I worked at the hospital. I started out in personnel. I worked there for 5 years, and then I transferred to the emergency department. Anyway, it was a good thing that I did because of the people that I met there and all the help they gave me and everything else. The problem was that I didn't have a degree, and so I would never have moved up in the personnel department and just been an administrator or whatever they call it, personnel clerk or something. So, because 2 people came in, and I knew I could do the one job, but no, they had to have somebody with a college degree. So I went to the emergency department, and they were very happy to have me there, and I stayed there for all that time. I did many things, many different things over the years, and learned a lot while I was in the emergency department. So while I was in the emergency department, I started going to junior college, and I got an associate in accounting degree from Oakton Junior College. And then I was taking classes from Northwestern University. I think that I had all of the enough junior credits, and I think for the senior year or whatever, the last year of college, I probably had a couple of credits into that. And then finally I decided it was just taking too much time. I just thought there were other things, because I was getting older then, and I was like in my late 50s, and I thought, getting a degree is not going to help me at this point in my life. So I just stopped going and decided to enjoy my life a little more. Well, I was at the hospital for 34 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
So I guess about 29 and a half years or something in the emergency department. But I had very different, as I said, a very varied skills that I used when I was in the emergency department, because I was in registrars reported to me for a while, then they'd take them away, then they'd give them back, and then they'd take them away. I wrote a lot of the protocols for nursing, but then the nursing office decided they didn't like that anymore, and they wanted the nurses themselves to write the protocols and give them to their office for them to type up. But I typed up a lot of the forms that they used at the registration desks. I even interviewed because the doctors didn't want to talk to the drug sales reps, and so they'd have me talk to them for a while. Then they finally decided they should have a doctor doing it, so there was always something to do. When I first started there, of course, there was no computers or anything at all. We had electric typewriters, and that was it. I'm pretty sure we had electric typewriters when I started in the personnel department. But then when I got to the emergency department, eventually they had Wang, and so we had Wang, which was a early computer type of word processing. Then they got the computers, just kept evolving, and so I felt like I grew up with the computers. Actually, one of the first jobs that I had was in Sioux Falls when Don was in college, was working at Nash Finch Grocery Company, and I was a card puller from the IBM cards for the grocery orders for the salesmen to have their groceries picked from and then deliver them to the people. So they would turn in the orders, and then we would take the orders and pull the cards, and then this great big machine would print out the orders. One time, somebody wanted an order, and Caroline, she was the one who had been there, and I was helping her. Somebody came from the back, and they wanted an order for some particular place because they were doing that packing now. So she ripped it off and let the other stuff fall to the floor, and she forgot about that. She'd left that stuff fall to the floor. Then we went on doing him. They'd come and get him, and she completely forgot that. So those people that were expecting orders the next day that were lying on the floor behind the IBM machine never got their orders. Well, they were not happy about that. So they called us in for a meeting. And I couldn't help it. It was so funny. I looked around, and here were 10 men around this great big long table. And here's Carol and I sitting here at the end. They're talking to us. And I thought, it takes 10 men to tell 2 little women that they made a mistake?
Yeah, wow, really?
They didn't appreciate my smile.
Did you still have your job after that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, where were they going to replace 2 people right away?
Yeah, true.
So anyway, it was one of the fun aspects. So it was a great big long bin of IBM cards. The IBM cards were about this long, this wide, And we would stick them into the IBM machine, and then it would print that out.
You really did like evolve with computers then your whole life. That's interesting.
Yeah, I started from the very beginning.
Yeah, and now you have a computer that fits in your hand, which is...
Yeah, so, and I've tried to keep up with it all my life, but...
I think you're doing pretty good.
Well, the fact that I was really the computer person for the emergency department, you know, it helped me learn too. So.
Yeah.
And then that's when we started getting a mini website for the emergency department.
Oh.
And then I would put things into that and take their protocols and put them into it so that they could just look up everything on the website. So I did that too. We just had to figure out how to do it, get it in there.
Yeah,
so.
That's cool. You were like a Jane of all trades.
Yeah, well, learning it all keeps your mind active.
Very true. So how old were you when you decided to retire?
I was 65, and actually I had decided I was going to retire when I was 65, about the time I was 60, and I could hardly wait for the years to go past. Because the head nurse and I did not get along real well. I just decided I'm going to work out my last 5 years and I will be gone. But somebody told me that I should do it at the end of a quarter or something. I don't know. So anyway, I just decided, well, I'll wait until the end of the year. So I retired on January 10th after I was 65.
Ooh, January 10th is Juno's birthday.
Yes.
Such a momentous day.
And I was very happy. Doug Prop, the doctor in charge, he kept telling me every day he'd come in and say, oh, the Dow's down. I said, I don't care how far it down goes. I'll just live on less.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am going to retire, and that's it.
Did you like miss working at all?
No. No, not in the least. It was so nice to be able to get up in the morning and just put on my bathrobe and not have to get dressed and go to work.
Yeah, true. Were having grandkids like the best thing that ever happened to you?
Well, it was among the best, that's for sure. I can't say, exactly. Unfortunately, I was working so much all the time that when I had grandkids, it was nice to have you, but I couldn't really spend any time with you because I was working all the time.
I remember you watching me sometimes when I was sick and stuff.
Yeah, well, not very often. Besides which, your mom was kind of like you. She didn't really want to let go of you all the time. So. But no, if ever I asked, she would let me. I miss not being able to spend time with the grandchildren, and once in a while, when I would feel kind of low, Rich could tell that I was, and he said, well, let's go up to Kenosha and see the grandkids, because he knew that I loved seeing them because they were so sweet. Well, they were different than you. They were, and I needed hugs, and I loved those baby hugs. They're kids. Well, not Kelsey so much, but Justin and Brianna was little. She was the sweetest little thing, and she would give me these baby hugs, and I'd feel better. So, yeah, I mean, it was nice when you were close, too. I think your dad didn't like it sometimes because I was coming over after work, which was right about your dinner time, but I think I got the message and didn't go quite so much then. Yeah, and I never really ever saw much of the kids in Florida. I mean, yeah, Nancy and Ricky, when we were over at staying at Anna Maria, then they would come for maybe a day or two, but it's not like when they're around all the time. So
yeah, favorites from when I was a kid and like of you is when you saw the Easter egg and you jumped in the window well and got the Easter egg.
Oh, and I jumped in and you were the photographer.
All right, I was like 6.
And you just dropped your camera and left your mouth fall open.
Well, who expects their grandma? There's no hesitation. You just saw it and jumped right in it.
I see the egg. I don't care if I have a sequin dress on. I'm jumping in there and getting that egg.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I still have that just like ingrained in my memory. You just jumping in there.
That was funny.
Oh.
When I said, finally I do something that's funny and nobody's taking a picture of it.
Well, I think I was just shocked.
You were in shock.
That was funny.
But anyway, somebody came and helped me out of the holes.
Good.
Probably Tom.
Yeah.
We went every year for many years before I retired for 2 weeks. Well, first we were going to Clearwater Beach. And then I don't know if somehow we got down to Anna Maria Island, and then we went there for 2 weeks until I retired. Went to Anna Maria for a month at a time. We rented a house and different houses. Sometimes we'd get the same one the next year, and then the owner was moving back in or something, and then we'd find another one. And we had one that was really good. It was a 3-bedroom, and it was like a block from the beach, and it was at the very north end of Anna Maria Island. It was and it was a really nice place, but of course the rates got more and more expensive. Then we went for 2 months, and we went for 2 months for a while, and then we decided to do 3 months, and I think we did that for 2 years. And then those people wanted to move back into their home, or wanted to move into their home. I think we found a place for a month after that. I don't know if that was the last time we went, but that was a nice one too, and it was just a block from the beach. But we enjoyed going there. Anna Maria was a fun place to go, and it was small. It wasn't all exploited like most of the other islands, so they wouldn't let any developers come in and do any developing of big developments. So what they got around it by building big houses on plots of land and then making them party houses. That didn't make the residents very happy. We enjoyed it while we could. We did a lot of traveling. We went on one cruise while I was still working. Then we went on another cruise. We went on a cruise to Mexico, which I didn't really like that much, but it was okay. We were going to go on a cruise to Alaska, and that's the year Rich got sick, and we had the reservations all made and everything. We went to Jekyll Island. We went to Glacier National Park. We went to San Antonio. And we were always saying, oh, we've always been so lucky. And never gotten canceled for our flights or anything. Well, we got canceled on our flight back. And Sasha was in a kennel, and Rich was not real happy, but anyway, so we just went back to the hotel and stayed there a couple more days till we could get home. And then Sasha was always such a mess after we'd pick her up. She was, from all that barking in her ears all day and night long. I don't know. It's awful to have to put them in a kennel like that, but it was one of the better kennels. So I don't know. Maybe they did quiet them down at night. I don't know. Sasha was a good traveler, though. So as long as we weren't flying someplace, we always took her along.
What did you like to do for fun on your vacation?
Well, mostly Rich liked to lie in the sun.
Yeah.
But we did. When we were we didn't lie in the sun when we were in San Antonio or Glacier National Park or even Jekyll Island. There wasn't any place to lay in the sun, but I don't know. We looked at the historical things at the places, and when we were in San Antonio, we took a tour through the Alamo, and we went on one of the boat tours, Riverwalk, and we went to the Old Mexico place in San Antonio. We just found things to do there, and Rich was always looking at all the brochures and stuff and figure out things to do. So He was really good that way. He always knew so much stuff about everything. I don't know how he knew so much stuff, but he did. So it was never a problem. We were never bored.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things when I was in my early years was climbing trees. And I could climb every tree in my yard that I could reach my arms around and climb up.
Like you shimmied your way up?
Well, I had to shinny up a long ways on some of them. This one tree was really tall. It was taller than the house. And I loved climbing on that tree because there was nothing blocking the wind, and I could climb way up high on it. And then the wind would blow, and I would just sway back and forth in the tree. And it was so much fun. My mom would come out and call me for dinner. Well, one time she did. And she came out and called me for dinner. Shirley, it's dinner time. And I said, okay. And she couldn't tell me where my voice was coming from. And she said, where are you? And I said, up here. And she said, where? Up here in the tree. And she looked up and she saw how high up I was, and I was swaying back and forth. Come down from that tree right now.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine.
But I did that all the time. It was fun. And my friends and I love climbing trees. The next thing I would like to talk about is the circus. We loved the circus. And the circus came to town, and it was set up on the grounds. There was some pasture that every year they would let the circus set up on that pasture land. When the circus came to town, of course, we all followed the wagons into town with the lions and the elephants and everything. And then since we were so close, about 3 or 4 blocks away, we would watch them set up the tents and everything. And so then, of course, we'd go to the circus in the afternoon. Nancy and Shirley Dickinson and myself, and then their brother Patrick, all loved the trapeze, and we were always trying to, they had a barn behind their house, and because their father had a horse that watered down the streets in the summer and delivered ice cubes around town, they had hay in their haymow, and so Patrick was always trying to make trapezes, he did make trapezes that we could fly on in the barn. And that was a lot of fun. And then one year, he was at a friend's house. They were supposed to be there. He was going to show them, they were going to make a trapeze to fly in this friend's basement. And he wanted to show them how he knew how to load a gun. So Patrick was sitting up on the workbench making this trapeze to hang from the rafters or whatever. And all of a sudden the gun went off. And it killed him. And it was probably one of the first really sad moments in my life. I didn't think I was going to cry because I've talked about this so many times.
It's okay, crying is.
But anyway, it was a terrible thing for us to have Patrick gone, because he was the one that was always with us and everything. After that, I had no interest in circuses anymore. They'd say, we need to take the boys to the circus. Well, okay, but I didn't really want to. So I took them. And then, I don't know, as they got older, I just hated going to the circus. I couldn't stand the smell of the circus or anything about it. It just, it really affected my life in that way of being a hard thing to go through.
Were you there when he got shot?
Oh no, this was just a bunch of boys hanging out in the basement of another boy's house. It was an awful thing. So we went to the beach. Us girls always went to the beach because hardly anybody had jobs. There weren't that many jobs around, only the boys worked anyway, but we went to the beach every day when it was warm enough. We would lie there in the sun getting tans. Ha ha. We used baby oil and iodine mixed together and put it all over our bodies, and the iodine was supposed to help make us tan. We did that, and I love swimming. I love swimming out to the raft, and then I love diving from the high dive board, and I love doing back dives. And of course, we loved the lifeguards. But they were older than us and not too interested in us, the little young girls. But
Was it a lake or?
yeah, Lake Mitchell, which is where Mitchell got their water, which this is probably the most horrible tasting water in the country. Well, my girlfriend did really fall for the lifeguard, and she went out with him a number of times, but he was like 2 or 3 years older, and he went off to college, so. And there were 5 of us that ran around together, Patsy, Deanna, Sharon, Kay, and myself, and we always had a slumber party for everybody's birthday. Well, not everybody had room, but we had my slumber parties at my house. I don't know where we fit, but we did. And one of our girlfriends, Patsy, they had a house at the beach, and so we could go out there because her birthday was the 5th of September, and we could go out there for her birthday party. Then, except if it was really not decent weather, but. And then Sharon Johnson, she didn't have, I don't know if they had room or not, but she never had it. She always had it at Patsy's lake house. And then, of course, the boys would follow us there, and we would, have a lot of fun. But anyway, then one night we had a birthday sleepover, and we were at Patsy's house. I don't know why. The weather must not have been good to be in the lake house, but at any rate, and we decided that night we were going to stay up all night. And man, you never know what staying up all night is like until you try it once.
How late did you get to?
We stayed up all night.
You literally, oh wow, that's impressive.
We did. We were all shot the next day.
Yeah.
I remember at one point I was standing up against the wall when I was sleeping, but not really sleeping. Yeah. So anyway, we did some a lot of silly things during those summer parties. But anyway, they were a lot of fun, and we had a good time. I got pregnant at age 16 due to my own stupidity and not being assertive enough. Also, I had been raised in a very, very protective environment, and talk about sexual things was very taboo. Women hid their pregnancies with smocks. It was a shameful thing to be pregnant, even if you were married. It was not something you advertised all over.
Wow.
So,
I didn't know that about them.
Don was going to seminary in St. Paul, and I got pregnant again with Darcy. Mom drove me to the hospital, and Dad stayed and watched the boys. Don was working a grocery chain that he worked for.
Was he ever in the hospital room when you gave birth?
Don? No, he always was working or something.
So he never saw you go through labor or anything?
No. Well, they wouldn't even let him in to watch it then. He was usually working.
Got it.
Which he had to do since I was always pregnant.
Yeah.
When I came home in about 3 days, and Mom helped me on December 4th, my cousin Eileen and 2 of her children were killed in a horrible, horrible accident on a country road. A milk truck ran right over them all. And so it was a mess. And then Mom really wanted to go back there, and I said, well, I need help here because I had 3 kids. And she said, well, it looks to me like you're doing fine. I said, no, I need some help here. Mom was torn between going back to Gayville and staying with me, and selfish me told her she should stay with me and help me, so she did. It weighed heavily on her that she couldn't be back there with her brothers and sisters, and that was a mistake for me because I could have handled it, really. But anyway, when she got there, Uncle Vern said, "Well, it's about time you got here." It really hurt her deeply. She was a very sensitive person. It weighed on her for a long time, I think. And on February 4th, we got a call from a close friend of Mom's at home that we needed to come home. The friend wouldn't tell us why we needed to come home. She just said, "You need to get home as soon as possible." So Don put Darcy and me on a train, and we went home. He and the boys drove to Mitchell the next day.
What year was that? It was
1960, February 4th, 1960. Darcy was born in November 59, and this was right after Darcy was born, a few months after she was born. Don and I discussed possibilities, and of course, suicide was discussed because Mom had attempted suicide some years earlier, but she never had a problem since then. I know I have forgotten details, but I took the train right home, and when I got there, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because when Don and I, well, probably we talked about it on the way to the train, but we also talked about it then the next day. But anyway, when I got there, I was just so upset. I was just sobbing uncontrollably. This friend of ours tried to get me to calm down and said, "You can't go on like this and worry and sobbing." And I said, "I'm going to sob as long as I want to sob."
Yeah, right?
And so anyway, she left the room and let me sob. I was just unconsolable, but when Don got there with the boys the next day, he tried his best to comfort me, and as I recall, he did a good job of comforting me. Made it through the funeral, and I don't think I've ever cried so hard and long in my life as when Mom died.
Well, I just want to say that
But
I don't think it was selfish of you to need your mom
Well-
after you gave birth, and I don't think you should carry that.
yeah, but I think it was because that's the way their family was. Everybody came when somebody died. But I told her I thought that I needed her more than they did, but, it's a toss-up. When I think about it now, I really do think I was very selfish, but,
I don't agree with you.
well,
If you could define your life in one word, what would it be?
chaotic.
Chaotic. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people could use that. How do you want to be remembered?
Well, I would like to be remembered as being a fair and just person and concerned for people, not being selfish and putting myself first, but I guess I guess I can't control what other people think of me, but that's how I'd like to be remembered. I know when I was at work, I was always trying to be fair with whatever the choices were. That's the way I would like to be remembered as, somebody who cared about others and was compassionate. Well, I'd like my family to know that I love them all very dearly. They maybe didn't always feel that way, but I did. I loved each one of my children all in different ways because they were not the same person, any of them. I loved them all. I just would like them to know that I certainly didn't favor one over the other. You know how kids are, they're always trying to compare themselves, whether they're getting in as much love as the other one is or not. But I did love them all. And sometimes they didn't feel that way. But Dick asked me that once, and I told him, you know, he always felt that I liked Greg more than him. And I said, Vic, I liked all of you. I liked all of you in different ways because you were all different people. I loved you for the way you were. Mm-hmm. And you all had strong points and good points. You have some bad, everybody has some bad points, and I accepted those too, but that's what happens. So, mm-hmm. You know, I think there's a lot of things people would want to change about the world, but we don't seem to be very good at doing it. I would like to see people being more considerate and compassionate of each other, and not always wanting what they want. I don't know, there's just too much greediness in this world. And if we could get rid of at least some of the greed, it would be very helpful. But of course, I'm not going to be able to do that, and I have to say I was not an activist, so I can't say that I did much on that part either. So, what lessons have I learned from my life?
Yeah.
That the small stuff slip by, and don't hang on to stuff. You need to let go of things, and they aren't important. And the important thing is to deal with the stuff that you can change as it happens, and if there's nothing you can do about it, accept it and forget about it, you know. If you can't do anything about it, then just let it go. And I think everybody would be much happier if they do more letting go.
Do you have any advice specifically for younger people, like the people in like the first part of their life?
You know, I don't know. All I can really say is to just try to be as fair and compassionate as you can. Don't be so concerned about all the stuff that happens in life, because, as they say, this too will pass away. So the best thing is just to get along with everybody as much as you can, and don't hang on to your own values. Look at other people's values also, and let them go on. There are many, many different ways of thought and beliefs, and we should just accept each other's.
Is any advice for like an older generation of people?
I don't know. I think the people's in their 50s and 60s and 70s should have probably worked most of it out by that time, but if they haven't, why, they just need to keep working on what is bothering them, and to not let greed and all these other things that seem so important to overtake them.
Are there any people in your life that had an especially large impact on your life?
Any people in my life who had an impact?
Like an especially large impact on you? That you say like had shaped you? Like, is there anybody that sticks out that really had like a really positive impact on you?
My supervisor at Lutheran General Hospital, Joyce Sinkowski, had a very big impact on me. And I'm so glad that I went to the emergency department in 1971, I think I went there. She was such a good Christian woman. She really was. And she did everything she can to live her life the way she had been taught. And she was very compassionate and concerned about everybody. She wasn't one of these people who had all these evangelistic Christian ways. She looked at everything as a part of life. She was a very inclusive person.
So like more of like a follower of like Jesus's teachings, I guess.
She was a true follower of Jesus, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Is she still alive?
Yes, she's the one who went to my first interview with Dr. James.
Oh.
And I guess one other thing I should say in this interview, should have said a long time ago, the Holy Spirit has been my guiding influence throughout my life. I see the Holy Spirit is as a woman. She has led me, she's actually talked to me. She's been a very comforting person. My life with and through her has been very good, and I really believe that that was through my early religious training, which felt that there were many times that I was guided by her. Things were rough or whatever, and so I want to mention that it was my early religious training. I always liked Sunday school. I was always searching for answers. I always wanted to do what I had been taught to do, and there was one time when she asked me a question and I couldn't answer her, and I guess I should have, but I didn't. And so that was probably one big part of my life where I failed her. But
how did you talk to her? Like just through prayer, or?
I don't know. I'd just be laying in bed and she'd say, "Where are you going, Shirley?" I think, what? Then I'd think about that for a long time. Where am I going? But, I just never really did anything about it, I guess. But I did think that I should have been, well, I actually at one time wanted to be a missionary. But I'm actually glad that I didn't, because I do not like that way of life anymore. I don't think we should be trying to change other people to this way. If they've got a religion they're comfortable with, we should leave them alone. I don't know, I couldn't even think of them all, Cara. The ways that, and something would happen and I would say, oh, that was the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
guiding me or doing something or whatever. So
what do you...
I just knew it.
Yeah.
After we die, well, none of us know, do we, what is going to happen?
You gotta visit me. Do you have any world events that you think shaped your life?
I don't think that they really shaped me as a person. I mean, I suppose they did, but if they did, I don't recognize how they did. I've never been somebody to think, well, I haven't been a deep philosophical thinker, but I do think a lot about religious philosophy.
Yeah.
But no, it's there was World War II, but I was only 6 and 7, 8 and 9 years old then.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't lose any brothers in the war, so I was very fortunate. In fact, of all our whole family, we didn't lose any of our kin. Actually, we all had a very good life.
That's good.
I divorced Don when I was, when I guess I was 34 or something like that. And then about 6 months after the divorce was final, 4 to 6 months after it was final, I met Rich, and though he had a lot of imperfections. He had more great qualities than he had imperfections. And I decided I could put up with the imperfections because he was so compassionate and he was so loving and he made me happy. And I was always a person who needed somebody to make me happy, I think. And as far as I'm concerned, that never really happened with Don. I never felt happy with him. So Rich and I had a great 45 years together. We did a lot of things, and it was fun 45 years. So.
He was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So anyway, we had our ups and downs too, but everybody does. Life doesn't just go on like a bowl of cherries, and
Mm-hmm.
you always have ups and downs in life. Some are worse than others, but I didn't have the worst ones with Rich like I did with Don, so.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to talk about?
I don't know. I'm getting too tired to think anymore.
Do you want me to turn it off?
Yeah.